Good day. Thank you for joining with me again. Before I get into the message, I would like to just give you a little bit of update. I want you to all know that the transitional team has been meeting through the month of May. Actually, we've been meeting once a week, and we are putting together all your comments, and we are coming down with the clarity of the vision, the values of this church body, the mission, and some strategic goals to achieve that mission. We are also meeting as elders on a regular basis, and we'll be having a meeting to discuss the possibility of having a couple congregational meetings so that we can inform you and give to you a copy of what the transitional team has been working on so that you could read it through and let us know if we heard you correctly. We also would like to update you on stage 1. The government is letting us meet after May the 14th. And so we'll be discussing it as elders, and we would like to kind of give you an update as to the decisions the elders have made on that. And so just encourage you to keep your calendar open, watch for any emails that come out on a regular basis. Jude has been doing a very good job of keeping us all up to date on that. And that will be sometime in June. And we would have to keep our groups 15 and under, and so we just ask that you watch for that and keep that in mind. If you have your Bibles, we'd like to go to Nehemiah chapter 6. And on the website, Jude has been doing a great job as well, keeping us informed and keeping us updated there. And there's an outline there to follow along. We're going to be taking a look at the first 19 verses of chapter 6. Let me start off with a question. Do you have any unfinished projects lying around collecting dust? It is so easy to get sidetracked, isn't it? It takes tenacity to finish what we start because there are always so many competing distractions. One thing that clearly emerges from our study in the book of Nehemiah is that life is a battle from beginning and end. In chapter 6 of Ephesians, verse 12, the apostle warns us, Apostle Paul says this, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of this world. And we meet these powers of darkness in our text today. Here in Nehemiah 6, as in many other places of Scripture, we learn that the devil has two main ways of working. First is the tactic of fear. Satan is prowling around, as Peter says in 1 Peter 5:8, like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And if that tactic doesn't work, he has another battle plan. He not only uses fear, but he uses flattery. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 14 reveals that Satan masquerades as an angel of light. The second way that the devil works is that he comes with enticing promises and flattering words, assuring us that what he proposes will cost us nothing. Whatever method the evil one employs, whether it be fear or flattery, his aim is to distract and to destroy us. And we need to be on our guard against each of these approaches. And that's why Paul in 2 Corinthians 11 says this, that we are not unaware of his schemes. We need to be on guard because Satan is both a lion that devours and a serpent that deceives. I'd like to just give you a simple outline of chapter 6 that will help us get a better handle on how to deal with distractions. First, the plotting. We see this in the first 4 verses. Since Sanballat and his sinister buddies failed in their attempts to stop the wall builders, they decided now to concentrate their attacks on Nehemiah himself. And by changing their tactics and resorting to subtle persuasion. We might even call this political softball. You will experience this as well when you try to connect some things in your life. Many people today are floundering in their Christian pilgrimage because they listen to the vice and temptation of those closest to them. Let us take a look at verses 1 through 4 of Nehemiah. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies, that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates. Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message: Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of On. But they were scheming to harm me, so I sent messengers to them with this reply: I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should I stop the work and leave it to go down to meet you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. These enemies suddenly became Nehemiah's friends. They invited him to a conference down on the plain. The first 4 verses look a lot like political consensus speech. They wanted to meet with Nehemiah and cut their losses, or so it seems. But Nehemiah, he senses the danger. They were scheming to harm me. And so Nehemiah said, oh no, I can't meet with you. Some of the commentators that I read suggest that they were trying to trick him into leaving Jerusalem, where he had an army support, to come to a conference where they could ambush him. And Nehemiah evidently sensed this. He firmly declined, saying, I'm carrying on a great project. I cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to meet you? It's a great answer, even though it sounds rather blunt. But Nehemiah sees through their scheme by refusing their invitation 4 times. You and I too may experience continual pressure to change our minds, to go along with something that is wrong. And some of us, we give in to repeated pressure. We might decline the first invitation, but we find our defenses weakened as the enticements continue. But Nehemiah, he persists in his refusal because he knows what his priorities are. I am doing a great work. I have a great calling. God has committed a tremendous project to me, and if I leave, it will be threatened. One of the most helpful things that we can do is in resisting temptation is to remember that God has called each one of us to a great task. If we don't practice some planned neglect of other things, even good things, we will be distracted from God's best. And that's what Nehemiah does. He's involved in a great work, and he's not going to forsake it for anything less. The second thing we see is the rumor. Verses 5 through 9. When the enemy can't accomplish his purpose by offering peace, he switches back to his original scheme of sinister threat. He moves from political softball to political hardball. And we see this in verses 5 through 7. Read with me if you will. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written, "It's reported among the nations, and Geshem says it's true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become the king and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let us confer together." This arm-twisting tactic is designed to pressure Nehemiah to yield to their requests and thus fall into their trap. But he resists because he sees it for what it really is, an enticement based on lies. Note, first of all, that it was an unsealed letter. In other words, it was designed for everyone to read, so that the lie would be spread around that Nehemiah was trying to make himself king. Have you ever noticed that rumors regularly cite people of distinction as sources? That's what happened here, and Geshem says it's true. Someone has said that gossip is news you have to hurry to tell someone else about before you find out it's not true. Nehemiah responds 3 different ways. He denied the rumor. He prayed to God for strength, and he went back to work. Look at it in verse 8. I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you were saying is happening. You are just making it up out of your head. That's the best way to respond to a challenge like this. Just flat out denial. He doesn't try to disprove the accusation, but he merely states that it's a lie, that there's no truth in it. And then invariably, as was his practice, he responded with another prayer up to the Lord in verse 9. They're all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will be too weak for the work, and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. Their tactics were to get the people to think that Nehemiah had some hidden motive, his own glory, for rebuilding the wall, hoping that the workers would thus become discouraged and quit. And Nehemiah, he simply prays, Lord, do not let this happen. Strengthen me to work all the harder. The intimidations, verses 10 through 19. Once again, the enemy switches his game plan in verse 10. One day I went to the house of Shimei, son of Delai, the son of Metabel, who was shut in his home. And he said, let us meet in the house of God, inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. By night, they are coming to kill you. This false prophet claims to have hidden knowledge. That is suggested by the phrase, he was shut in at his home. He was secluding himself for some religious reason. What he says sounds logical. Some people are out to get you. They're going to kill you. Nehemiah certainly believes that. The man suggests, come up here and we will go into the temple and shut the door. They will not dare attack you there. Well, it sounds good, but immediately Nehemiah detects that something's wrong. He knows that he's not permitted, first of all, to go into the temple, for only the priest could enter the holy place. And so he answers in verse 11, but I said, should a man like me run away? Or should one like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. Nehemiah realizes that a prophet who is really from the Lord would say nothing contrary to God's commands. In verse 3 he said, I cannot come down. And now he says, I will not go in. Having right priorities gave Nehemiah the courage to do what is right. Courage is not the absence of fear, but instead it's the tenacity to do what is right, no matter how much we are afraid. You see, it's not just a matter of saying no to distractions. We have to first say yes to the right things so that our priorities match up with God's priorities. The transitional team has been working hard. I'm putting together the vision, the values, the mission, strategic goals to achieve for this body. We want to encourage you to set your priorities, to match up your priorities with what God has given. As we keep the main thing, we'll be able to deal with distractions the way Nehemiah did. And God gives Nehemiah some incredible insight in verses 12 and 13. He says, I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He'd been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. It was all part of a plan to discourage and distract the people from following Nehemiah's lead. Fueled by jealousy and ambition, these enemies slandered him and tried to trick him into yielding to their demands. We must be aware of this kind of attack in our lives as well. Don't take someone's advice or do what a friend asks you to do just because they seem like a nice person. Don't let anyone or anything distract you from God's priorities. The best response to such an approach is what Nehemiah uses, a deep sense of his true identity as a believer. Should a man like me run and hide and try to save his life by wrong approaches and unlawful practice? He falls back upon his clear understanding of who he is and what his priorities are. He's a believer in the living Lord, and as such need not resort to trickery to save his life. And Nehemiah meets his attack of the enemy by going to prayer once again in verse 14. He says, remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophetess and the rest of the prophets who have been trying to intimidate me. This brings us to the end of the first phase of Nehemiah's work. In verses 15 and 16. And so the wall was completed on the 25th, in 52 days. When all our enemies heard about this, and all the surrounding nations saw it, our enemies lost their self-confidence, because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. Even their enemies had to admit that God was at work. This entire project was finished in just 52 days. What a beautiful picture of the power of Christian witness in a community. Even their foes must agree that God is at work among them. But the enemies are still not through. In the closing verses, we see how they continue their tactics of opposing and distracting. Verse 17 and 18. Also in those days, the nobles of Judah were sending many letters to Tobiah, and replies from Tobiah kept coming to them. For many in Judah were under oath to him, since he was son-in-law. Jechan, son of Era, and his son Joronah had married the daughter of Mashal, son of Berkai. This is simply saying that Tobiah had intermarried with the Israelites. Taking advantage of that relationship, he was seeking to undermine Nehemiah's influence by nothing more than mere gossip. As Nehemiah says in verse 19, moreover, they kept reporting to me his good deeds and then telling him what I said, and Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me. One of the things that I'm noticing in this passage, one of the overriding truths from this book, is that the devil never quits. He's never going to give up while we're still alive. God has wonderful blessings and much encouragement and joy for us along the way, but we must never cease battling the world, the flesh, and the devil until we get to heaven. The enemy of God will never quit. If he can't distract you with fear and flattery, he will use gossip and false accusations. As we close this morning, let us ask God to apply this passage to our lives. And I see at least 2 action steps. First, practice saying yes to God's priorities. The best way to not be distracted is by being attracted to those things that are hard of God. Once we are aware of what those are and we're attracted to them, we need to commit ourselves to a life of full devotion and complete commitment. What are you hearing today? What is it that is most important to you? Are you locking onto God's kingdom purposes, or are you focusing on a bunch of other things? The second action step is practice saying no to the devil's distractions. May I encourage you, take some time right now and ask the Holy Spirit to help you identify those things that are distracting you from God's priorities. The enemy will try to distract you. But while he's blasting away, God is building his kingdom. Satan is subtle, but God is sufficient. Remember, when God's priorities become our priorities, God's kingdom work will advance. When the wall was completed in verse 16, it says, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. As we get the new vision, the values that come from your responses on the sticky notes, the mission that came from those same responses, the strategic goal, as we grab hold of that vision, may this be said of us as well. May they realize, may the people around us, may those that are causing distractions, gossiping, starting rumors, may they realize that this is a work that has been done with the help of our God. May you have a great day, and God bless you all.